All right, folks. Well, I hope that my voice isn't too much a rude awakening after that very soothing music in the countdown. We are here today to talk about 8 ways to foster a culture where people embrace change. I'm Aaron Schmuckler, CEO and company culture engineer at the Yes Works, and I'm thrilled that you're here with us. I'm thrilled to be here with you. And I am beyond thrilled to have one of my favorite human beings on the planet with me today to talk with you about how you can help foster this culture where people embrace change. Hugh Stewart is the CEO of Platform Transition. And as I said, one of my favorite human beings on the planet. If you know me, you know this is not my standard mode of dress for doing these LinkedIn lives. I have decided to be in solidarity with you, Hugh, and so I've worn a black T-shirt.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
uh,
thank you so much, Aaron. I appreciate the kind welcome. My name's Hugh, and I am the CEO of a company called Platform Transition. We provide data migration services to ERP platforms from a variety of legacy systems, and it has been kind of an interesting journey starting that business, not because I found a really neat and interesting opportunity in the marketplace, but rather because I was a desperate CFO that needed
mm,
the solution for myself. And as a result, it was just me. And I had to effectively do it for me and then
mm.
do it for others and then invite other people to come hang out and do it together. And as a result, over the last 10 years, we have become kind of an industry name in the places that we play. That we deliver really interesting services that are among some of the most innovative in the very arguably boring world of data migration.
Well,
So
it's
we're
great.
passionate about it, and we love to engender change. And as a result, I think this is a fantastic conversation. I think we get to have today about how change can be the most natural thing that happens, and you can thread it into an organization. Go ahead, Aaron.
Before we got on here live, Hugh, you used a word that I love. It's a just as a vocabulary nerd, I love the word recalcitrance. And you brought that up before we started. We thought we might start with why do people resist change in the first place? What is it that has that happen? Why do we need to even be talking about how to help people embrace change? What are some of your thoughts?
Sure. So I took some notes prior to our call, and one of the things we treated as a premise was, well, how do we have folks embrace change? And then I thought, well, every natural system in the world. I used to be an engineer, so modeling systems is kind of a geek out expression of just being alive for me. Every system undergoes change. Every breath you take as a human being causes you to be different than you were even a second ago. So the idea that you'd have to have people embrace change kind of broke my brain. But instead I said, okay, let's play with the concept and let's have some fun. So instead I thought, okay, what needs to be true in my modeling of reality such that I would naturally resist change?
Mm,
And then how can we talk about that at scale? And I came up with 6 statements that I'm going to make personal. And I'm not trying to insult anybody out there. So I'm just going to talk about me. So when I resist change, it's normally because of these 6 things. They're not inclusive of everything that's there, but I think it gets the juices flowing for how we orient ourselves and can be responsible for how we approach change and then how we can begin to inspire it in other people.
mm,
So, number one, when I am not connected to value, instead, when I'm connected to hours. So if I am focused in on time or some limiting or limit focused resource, I realize that I become resistant to becoming flexible in how I see and do things. When I am not connected to results and
mm,
instead I'm connected to tasks. So if
mm.
I'm supposed to do something that is very distinct from getting something done, there is a beauty of mental flexibility that is available when you're committed to a result as opposed to doing something a certain way, right?
Yeah. And so
The third
would
thing,
you
go ahead.
put in that category of things that you're connected to, like time, that are limited resources? Would you include effort there?
Sure,
Yeah.
I
So
would.
I'd rather not put in the effort instead of I want to make sure I deliver this value.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Keep
Correct.
going. I
I'm
love it.
aligned. So when I am not able to see my effect on others, so a
Mm.
lot of times I think the desire to stay where we are has everything to do that we have robbed ourselves of a perspective of how we create ecology, how we touch and interact with the world around us.
Mm.
And by and large, conversely, when you feel like you don't have control over how others affect you,
Mm.
that is also a powerful reason to want to control the things you know and not step out. Oh, sorry. I do this. When I believe that my value is derived from an extrapolation of my tasks, that's a powerful one. And
Mhm.
so, one of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit today is when I hire someone in their interview, I will say, you may be coming to us to perform this particular role or task, but understand, I do not see you as a human being that is simply just an extrapolation of your function in the business. Instead, I hire you to come and perform these tasks, but your most important asset to me is your perspective. And as you
Mm.
stay longer with us, your perspective grows. And in many cases, who knows what you're going to end up doing for us or with us ultimately, what you'll get curious about, or what you'll be inspired by, or who in the business you'll go and want to hang out with after you finish your tasks. So it's very clear that their value or my value isn't derived just by what I do for the business, because it's a very dangerous game that if for some reason that value is transferred or the technology that employs or engages you has to change, if your tasks and what you do is why you're there and the only reason that you're there, then it makes for a very scary universe. And then the
Mm.
last one I have, and then I will stop talking at you, Aaron, is when I believe that other people's value is derived as an extrapolation of their
Mm.
tasks. And this is where we have an opportunity to take responsibility for the spoons stirring the soup. This is where, as leaders of the business, if you want to have people embrace change, you first become a person for which change breathes for which change breathes you. And I'll stop.
I I love this, and you and I talked, you, in advance of this, about how this is unlikely to be a linear conversation, and it's not going to be straight up 8 ways to do this. What you just said of other, uh, if other people's value, if you believe other people's value is derived from their tasks, it reminds me very much of a conversation that I've had many times since COVID, which is business leaders have asked me, how do I know that I'm getting my 40 hours out of my people? And I think it's a term from computer science and programming. The term moo, I think, means you're asking the wrong question. The question is not, am I getting the hours? Because you don't pay people for their hours, even though you may calculate it that way. And the proof is in, I don't pay uh, everybody on my team equally, right? Even though they may put in equal hours, I'm paying for the value I believe I'm going to get from those hours. And so the when you're looking for the value that people bring instead of the tasks that they complete, it's very much like the value that people bring, uh, the value that they create instead of the time that it takes for them to create it. And
and
maybe
and And now we are at the point of the conversation where I will bust your chops
I
because
love it.
I'm always very sensitive when you use words that I consider to be not quite there. So you said something, value that you get from them. That's
Mm,
an interesting paradigm. And I'll tell you where it has become a challenge for me and a challenge that I am probably going to be going after for the rest of my life. I recognize that, especially in the value creation business, which is where we are, we're not a commodity, hopefully, yet. AI has not taken over the world as of today. But where we are, I recognize that every opportunity that I have to engage with another person where we get to interact and create an experience. And that is, and the employer employee, employer contractor relationship is no different for me. It is an opportunity to co create. So I'm very sensitive about transactional language. Even when I go out to dinner, yes, I'm going to a restaurant, I'm sitting at a table, I'm expecting that I will not suffer food poisoning and that people are going to feed me food that hopefully well cooked and that it will be an enjoyable experience. However, as a participant in that experience, I have a choice. I can either consume or I can take responsibility for co-creating an experience. And the same is this is the distinction that I'm busting your chops with, is that with every employee that we have the opportunity to have serve alongside us. Now, remember my story. This particular business started with me. I was the only person. I was a salesperson. I was the person that had to do all the programming. Like I was, so the fact that there are other people that find this half as interesting as I do is freaking amazing.
yeah.
And I thank my stars every day that they come to work to be as passionate about the stuff we're doing as I am. In many cases, in some cases, they stay up later and they show me things I didn't know, or they will invent things that blow my mind. I don't even understand how they work, but I want to show them to other people on the team and see, look, this is what's possible. So anyway, the idea that I want to just kind of come back to is, in the game of, again, embracing change, the idea is that you remain responsible for the co-creation. I'm not saying that you live in this woo-woo world where you don't let people know what is expected of them. That's not my point. But my point is that I am responsible for the created experience that I'm having with this person. And I am also responsible for their results and their ability to align with my vision.
Bingo. I love talking with you, Hugh, because you keep me honest. You keep me coming back to the values that I espouse when sometimes my vocabulary hasn't caught up with my values. So, Hugh, this is, I think, a good time to transition into the 8 ways that we've promised people, the suggestions that we have, how to foster a culture where people embrace change. And we've already been hinting at them, I'm sure. Hugh, what is the first suggestion that you have for folks about how to foster this kind of culture?
Sure. So orientation is important. And so you'll see that there's a common theme of the ones that I present. I'm going to start with my number one is, when in public conversation, that means in a forum in which you have multiple folks in your company interacting, be willing to defend ideas that you might not even like or agree with from others in order to communicate that everyone gets to be involved in the conversation. So inclusion is the great way. So, part of what we're going to be talking about today is the recognition that in order for people to feel great about change, they have to be a part of it. And
Mm,
you have to be intentional about creating open spaces of thought, of engagement, of interaction, in which they get to be a part of a solution that they can be proud of and defend. And they need to know you, as the leader, you are willing to defend their ideas even if you don't like them, just so
mm,
that everybody can be engaged. Your thoughts?
I love the idea that you are going to be as a leader, you are going to be ready to defend the ideas that you might not like. I think particularly once you've decided to go down this path, right? If you, for whatever reason, you've decided to go down this path, defending that path, even if it's not the path of your choosing.
Well, and if you have time, I can tell you a story about that one.
Let's do it.
All right. And then I want to hear yours. So, in our company, we took 6 months to develop our company values. And one of our company values, I'm not even going to say what it was because one of my directors decided that she really had a problem with that company value. It just rubbed her the wrong way. She didn't like it. She struggled for almost 2 years. Every time we would read it out our meetings, she just kind of bit down, and at some point she just kind of brought it to the entire company and said, guys, this one, it just doesn't align with who I think we are.
Yeah.
Now, that company value had been something I made my personal life's mantra for 15 years up to that point.
Mm.
So I had a very, very, very deep interest in not changing it. But it was so important for her to be heard and for people to know, yes, we are an organization that can't change willy-nilly, but at the same time, everybody has an opportunity to have a discourse. And if something really does rub them, they have an opportunity to air it. We might not change, but we do get to listen. And as a result, in public forum, many of the other folks on the team knew how important this was and found no issue with the actual value, and didn't attack her, but were very, very opposed to her ideas in such a way that it felt like they were ganging up on her because she was the only one that was having this particular movement. And I had to step in and say, hey, let me understand where your challenges are. And I basically presented to the company in a way that she was not yet able to articulate what her thoughts and ideas were. Because again, she got to have an advocate in me just to simply have her idea be properly communicated. After it was properly communicated, a number of other people on the team found that by making modifications to the value that we wrote down, it did not change how they felt about the company, but it allowed her to be included. And it ended up replacing our value. And so the value today is we are a space where chaos fades away.
Mm. Isn't that wonderful?
And it has now become my favorite of our corporate values.
And when we talk about inclusion, it's not just about do we have different people from different backgrounds, different races at the table. This is a story of real profound inclusion. And so thank you very much for the story.
So what's your first one? Let me hear it.
My first suggestion for you folks, Hugh, you've been through one of our fundamental training programs, and so you'll recognize this one. My first suggestion is to cultivate a culture of yay for failing. There is our brains. Why do we resist change? Well, because our brain's job is to keep us alive, and whatever we've been doing has worked. Congratulations, it's today. If you are hearing my voice, you are alive. That means that there is a significant part of your brain that wants to do tomorrow exactly what you did today because it worked. And so the opposite of worked, right, arguably is failed.
Annihilation.
Right. And failing may well come along with annihilation. And so
Sure.
the safer you can make failing, the safer you can make it for people to fall on their face, the more likely they are to embrace change. And folks, they're not going to believe you if you say, look, we're going to make this change. If you fail, that's okay, they're not going to believe you. If instead you say, for the first week, for the first month, for however long, you are going to fail. We are going to have failures. This is how we're going to deal with them. They will believe that. If you say you are going to fail and it is okay, you are going to fail, that is my expectation, then people are much more likely to embrace the change that you are requiring that they risk. And I'm going to put a little emphasis on that word risk. Change is risky, and you've got to acknowledge that in order to have people embrace it.
Wow. Okay. So the only thing I'm going to tell you is that on the other side of my brain, I will hit you back with, and nothing of true value can ever be lost, is what I console myself with when everything has collapsed.
Mm.
And so at the end of the day, you're right. Risk is significant. And yet, the nihilist in me says, and yet I have lost everything and I continue to breathe. So if we're going to be truly brave about our lives, how do we step into the darkness knowing that we will just be able to keep breathing?
I think that is an advanced skill, right? While
That's
you and I
funny.
are very much, I think, aligned on that as a truth in our universe and of ourselves, going from the belief in that
That's funny.
to the practice of the belief
Mm,
is a tall order.
sure.
Um, and so meeting people where they're at, acknowledging that whether you believe that there's any risk at all in for real or not, acknowledging people where they're at, if they perceive this risk is real for them, that's going to help a great deal.
Now you just made a really good point. You made a really good point just now, and I love the word you used. The perception of risk is the currency that I think we can
Mm.
both agree on. The perception of risk is where we as a leader, as leaders of our respective businesses, have the most amount of autonomy and control over the experience that folks are having. And in that respect, I think you've nailed the language and you've nailed the concept.
All right. Well,
All right.
Hugh, what is the second suggestion that you have for our watchers, our listeners, uh, about how to foster a culture where people embrace change?
So be real. Publicly air the challenges that are facing the audience that are being asked to embrace the change.
Mm.
The more they are involved in processing the challenges and providing ideas to support its resolution or the resolutions to these challenges, the easier embracing change will be.
Mm.
Because a lot of folks, I know I like to have easy conversations until they're not easy anymore. And then I like to have hard conversations. And hard conversations are fun because you get to be creative and and you get to manage emotions and you get to challenge yourself and you get to see your darkness and all kinds of things get to happen. And so by talking about tough and comfortable things in an audience and showing that you can walk in the light of reality and you don't have to be the presentation of your best self in front of the people who are going to be responsible for your future, some magical things can happen. And it's staying tuned to the magic that is worth the price of admission.
Mm. To put kind of really tactical, tangible on that, what I think I hear you saying, Hugh, is if we look at your what you do, the migrating of data, right? And okay, the data type B is not mapping out properly to data type B. Then we say, all right, folks, let's look at this. The fact is, we've got data type B is getting scrambled before it gets over to the new platform. Let's acknowledge this is true
Yes.
instead of trying to keep it cloistered in a back office somewhere. Resolve it quickly and move on.
Or
is that
try
what
to
you're suggesting?
pretend, or trying to pretend that there isn't a problem, that you just need to talk behind closed doors to the upper management,
Uh-huh.
because that's, quieter and less embarrassing.
Right. Great. Right. And easier in that environment of yay for failing.
Correct.
Right. If we're in an environment where, yeah, failing is expected, it's embraced, and then we learn from it, then all right, I'm not going to have to hide my failure for fear of losing my job or for fear of public ridicule.
Yeah.
Mm.
What's yours?
All right. Let's see. What was my next thought for you folks? Is something I call the kite principle. So the kite principle suggests that when you're introducing a change, it is incredibly valuable to tell people also what will stay the same. And why is it called the kite principle? Think about a kite, right? It's up there, and if the wind is switching back and forth, then the kite shifts from left to right. The kite can pretty well handle whatever the wind throws at it, as long as it's got that single line down to an anchor point. If you've ever flown a kite, then you'll know if you let go that line, then the kite will fall. People love to have a port in the storm, a touchstone, and when you give people a here's what's going to stay the same, then they have that anchor point. We're making these changes, and those things you can count on remaining the same.
Mm.
And it may seem obvious to you. It may seem like it goes without saying. It doesn't go without saying.
Mm. That one is powerful. That one is powerful. Sometimes the only thing you have that's the same is the air you breathe, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And sometimes it can be useful to say, look, folks, you're going to be breathing the same air, right? Or whatever the equivalent is of that for the particular change that you're introducing. Or, and this isn't always about the changes that you are introducing. The world, the universe
Yeah.
is a place that, as you said, Hugh, is a changey. We're in a changey place. So sometimes we have change thrust upon us, and as a leader, to say, folks, here are all the changes that we are needing to embrace, because the most dangerous thing for us to do is to ignore reality. So here are all the changes we need to embrace, and here is what is remaining the same.
You just sparked a story. May I share it?
Please.
So I owned a business in Central North Carolina many years ago, and we helped people in real estate get out of a certain type of trouble. And I had a staff that worked out of our office, and I remember coming to work one morning and finding out from one of the lobby groups that I belonged to that the state of North Carolina had changed the laws on the previous Friday and enacted them to effectively render my business illegal. Like the thing we were doing,
Oh
they
no.
literally passed a law saying you can do it, but you can't charge money. Like you can do the thing that you were doing, but you have to do it for effectively a charity or free. You can't charge money to do that service. And I remember going, okay, so what do we have? And I remember looking around, and it ended up being that we had to reposition our managers. Some of them we had to let go because we couldn't operate anymore. And we ended up redesigning our solution to provide data services to investors in the state. Like
Mm.
it was the most nonlinear solution to the problem, because yeah, it sucked for a good 2 hours to think about everything that we had invested in the business to that point, but the law had changed. And so we had no option but to simply go, okay, this looks like a pretty interesting opportunity. How are we going to get out of this one this time? And then the solution presented itself. And within a week and a half, we had reoriented ourselves, and away we went.
Great story.
Mm,
Um, right. I mean, and COVID is another example of that, right? We
mm,
just had here's a big change. It's thrust upon you. You're going to have to adapt to this change. You got to have to embrace it because the alternative is to ignore reality.
mhm.
The most dangerous thing you can do.
Well, and the
Uh,
beautiful thing about loss is that it opens up all kinds of new opportunities. Like, a wonderful thing about change is that on the other side of it, and you said something in the previous statement talking about the kite. That one's just sticking around because if you're really focused on an end result that you want, a mission that you're on, a focus for your business or even for your personal life or for your professional life, if you don't have employees, then I have found that if you look hard enough, you'll find a way to make whatever the change is, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, get you to your goal,
mm,
whether it be a little bit of a detour or an off ramp or jet fuel. Like it all can help if you're willing to be a little bit more creative. And as I often say to my friend Aaron, explore the world of infinite behavioral flexibility.
that's yeah, right. What? How much are you willing to break your own patterns of behavior?
Yes, that is
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
You
All
know,
right, Hugh. What's your third suggestion for the good people at home?
sure. So this one, again, there's a theme here. Continually poll for any dissent or unalignment
Mm,
and be encouraging of any dissenting opinions to be considered and regarded. What we've learned is that people love to be heard. I used to own a business a long time ago where I would deal with the angriest customers because that's who would show up and be escalated to me. And I love talking to them because 70% of the time, they just needed to have their humanity acknowledged. That, you know what, I have a feeling. They don't have to even be right, but they
mm,
do get to be heard. And the data informing their feelings may not be accurate, but their feelings are accurate.
mm.
And so part of the responsibility of managing the dynamics of your organization and its culture is recognizing that every single person has an opportunity to be a proponent for your change. So even though it may take a little bit more time, making sure that you know where they are, whether they're in alignment, and are if they're not in alignment, taking the time and creating the space for them to say, these are the things that bother me about the idea. Okay, let's hear it. Let's make it valid that you have this opinion and let's talk about its reality. If it's not real, then let's show that and let's make sure that we honor you in that process. And if it is real, then let's talk about how we can mitigate those effects so that you, as an individual contributor on this team, have the ability to stand behind this change. Because every
Love it.
single proponent of that change, if they're truly aligned, they will defend it against others. And that's what you
I
want. You just
I,
want them
I
to,
love this.
you want them to maintain it. You want them to make it evolve. You want it to seem like it was their idea when you're done.
Mm. And I think the temptation, at least the temptation has been for me, and the temptation that I hear from a number of the people that I work with, is often uh, to move quickly if you can, like past any potential objection, as if there's some kind of sleight of hand that you can
Mm,
conduct that's going to eliminate those objections
sure.
or make them somehow fade into the background. We have a listener. Michelle is asking, why did this revert back to the 10-minute mark and replay what we've already heard? And I don't
Uh-oh.
know the answer to that. Hopefully, Michelle, you'll be able to hear everything through. Again, I'm sorry for that reversion. All right. Well, I think this is very wise, Hugh. And folks, Hugh and I did not compare notes. We don't know what each other is going to suggest. So it's very fun that Hugh's third suggestion aligns as well as it does with my third suggestion. My third suggestion for you is to address groaning in the same way that you can't hurry past objections and get to the other side and somehow uh, make that mean that they don't exist. You're going to hear complaints, even if you're not soliciting them, or if you've been doing a good job as a leader, you're going to hear complaints. If you're not hearing complaints, then you go back to Hugh's suggestion to solicit the complaints, because if you're not hearing them, you're just missing the ones that are being held quiet. It looked to me, Hugh, like you had a something you wanted to say there.
Well, so I think there's an important distinction that's made, because I can hear the cynic in the audience saying, "Wait a second, we can't very well have everybody agree with all the changes out there. That's ridiculous,
That's
because it's not
true.
going to happen."
Yes,
So
that cynic is correct.
so what I was going to make sure that we were very explicit in noting here is that we're not looking for agreement. We are looking for alignment. There
Mm,
is it is a very small nuance change in the word separated by an ocean of meaning.
big
And
time.
what
Is it Amazon where they have the ethos disagree and commit?
actually I don't know that. That
Right,
would
but
be good
the
for just
idea
to
there
research.
is, before a decision is made, we're going to introduce the idea of potentially going down this road. And at that point is when you're going to solicit people to disagree, solicit their concerns, and listen for groaning in the hallway.
Hmm.
Poll your leaders about complaints that they may be hearing. Really get to what are the complaints, what are the concerns, and address them, including taking them in and pressure testing them for validity yourself, right? Oh, we
Hmm.
may want to change. The plan was to go down path A. Based on these concerns, we're going to go down path B instead. And then once that decision is made, that's the point at which you are aligned. This is what we are going to do. Get on board. As they say, I think at Amazon, disagree and commit.
And the distinction is an important one, because again, someone can disagree with something and yet not have their day be ruined by it.
Yes.
And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the ability to implement change that engages the best of what you want your future to look like, while allowing people to be themselves, operate in a space of confidence, not necessarily comfort, but confidence, and know that whatever change, if they're for it, fantastic. If they are for it such that it supports other people on the team, fantastic. And if they're neutral, because it doesn't really affect how they show up to the planet, fantastic. What you don't want is for someone to say, "I hate that and I haven't been listened to," because
Mhm.
those stories are corrosive, and they are the things that nefarious actions are made of.
And you may end up with people who hate it
Hmm.
and have been heard and whose
Hmm.
minds haven't been changed,
Hmm.
and it's still time to commit.
Yes.
What you don't want to do is to hear groaning or know that there's groaning going on and walk past it as if it's not happening.
Yes.
That is going to be a little bit of acid dripping into your operation. And so
Yes.
you want to acknowledge the validity, as you said earlier, Hugh, the validity of their complaint, the validity of their feelings,
even though the
and
data even though the data informing those feelings may not be accurate, they may just have really
maybe,
messed up ideas about how it's supposed to work or not work,
maybe,
and that's okay too. But you don't repress the feeling.
and maybe you as the leader are the one who is wrong.
True.
And that's okay too. We're still going to go down this path. Can
Yes.
you get on board and make sure you get that commitment? Yes,
Yes.
I'm on board. Terrific.
Yes.
If you're on board, then I expect the groaning to stop.
Yes.
And by the way, that doesn't mean I never want to hear about this again. I simply don't want to hear the same things again. If you have new data for me because the world is changing and we should reassess, then bring me new data.
Well, and at the same time, and this is where I remind you, Aaron, that if it exists, then it has its own validity of existing, right? If there is a change that is so off-putting and someone has offered you alignment, it doesn't mean that they're always going to be aligned forever and ever. Amen. It also
Indeed.
means that as a leader, you have an opportunity to go back and continue pruning the trees. You go back and you say, "Oh, I know this is," you recognize, yes, the change may be to this person offensive.
Mm,
And yet, as long as it's not creating a place where they are bathing in toxicity, you have an opportunity to have them see how it could be supporting them. You're continuing to engage. You don't disconnect just because the change has happened. They've made their commitment and they say they're aligned, because unalignment can happen, just like it can happen with your tires. Your tires, as you drive your car over time, will need realignment.
mm.
People also need realignment. And it's
And
just
so do our strategies and plans, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's not like it ever just stops. And if it sounds exhausting, welcome to leadership. Enjoy your
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah. All right. You.
What was
Uh,
your third? I don't know that we
that was it.
did.
It was
Oh, we
address
had the same
groaning, right?
third.
Which
That's
which
right. That's right.
exactly.
That's right. That's why I
So
didn't write it down, because the same as mine.
so Hugh, before we hear from you about your final suggestion,
Mhm.
how can people and why might people want to get a hold of you?
Oh, well, so if for some reason you've outgrown your accounting platform, so if you're on QuickBooks or Sage 50 or MIP, and you have had a good time of growing over the last few years, or your business has become way more complicated and you want to move to a more sophisticated system like a Sage Intact, we can help bring the historical detail and some of the other accounting information that you might want to take from your old system to take it to the new system. So potentially, if we do it just right, you can have your old system be retired forever and not have to go back to it. That's the kind of the ideal scenario. So we've helped, I don't know, governments and schools and multinational corporations and advertising firms and mom and pops and nonprofits and
And
universities and tech firms and blah 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 blah. So yeah,
multi-company entities.
yes, yes. So if you have one entity because you don't have a shop down the street, or if you have 200 companies that are in a conglomerate or a hedge fund that need to consolidate reporting across 40 acquisitions or something like that, those are all the folks that we have solutions for from all over the world. We operate out of 4 countries and we serve 5.
Brilliant. All right, Hugh, what is your final suggestion for the good people at home?
When going into a meeting to discuss a problem, even if you have a solution in mind, see if you can authentically, temporarily suspend your
Mm,
own opinions of the solution
mm.
for the duration of the solution seeking exercise.
Hugh, that's really
Because,
hard.
yes, this is the toughest one. That's why I left it for last. Can you be absolutely neutral? You know you want this change. You know you want it, but can you go through an exercise when discussing the challenges to your own change that you want to bring to your organization? Can you make yourself neutral enough
Mm.
to suspend what you think should work and be surprised and in wonder? What are your
So
thoughts?
if that's the strategy, Hugh, do you have any particular tactics that you can recommend? Like, how do you do that operationally as a human being with a brain? How do you do that?
A lot of breathing. So I'll tell you exactly what I do. So I will spend the night before a meeting that's supposed to introduce some big change, or if I've already introduced a change and now we're going through and my team is now coming back, and we're going to be meeting again, because sometimes these change meetings go over a period of time. We have an exercise called the strategy circle, and it's from Strategic Coach, not our IP, their IP. We've been using it for 20 years. And what we do is we first list everything that we want to get accomplished, the goals, the results, the feelings, everything that we want this solution to have. And then we spend sometimes as much as 2 hours just being negative, listing all the ways that what we say we want won't happen, or will break, or will fail,
Mm,
right? And a lot of times I will be inspired by knowing exactly how I think I want it to work. And what I have to do is, when I go into those meetings, I breathe. I will literally feel the air that's going in my nose, so I don't have to focus on my thinking about how I think it's going to work. And I listen. I listen to the words. I pay attention to two things. I pay attention to the words that are hitting my eardrums and the sensation of the
mm,
words hitting my eardrums. And I listen deeply to every single person that is talking, so that I am not busy thinking my own thoughts.
mm,
And so, because I'm doing those two things, I'm breathing and listening, I'm breathing and listening, I'm not talking, and I'm not projecting my own thoughts, and I'm truly paying attention. That
mm,
openness as a leader creates the space for people to be excited about whatever comes next. And all you have to do is just nudge in the direction
mm.
of the result. It's not so much the tactic of the change that you care about. You've introduced a change, so it's creating an inspiration for what's about to happen. What's really powerful is, because you've already set it in motion and you've clearly identified the result, it is now the exercise is to get all of your team to begin to make and evolve that change solution into their own, so you don't have to keep selling it. The real trick is to put it in their hands in such a way that it becomes theirs to maintain and run with. That's what you're truly after, because you don't want them to just embrace change and then you have to go back and sell it constantly, because you're the only one that believed in it and everybody's fighting you. What you're ultimately after is being able to create the inspiration, be able to focus on the result. So if it molds and shifts and changes and doesn't look exactly like you thought it was going to, that's okay, as long as you keep testing it for that end result. Magic happens, because then you're able to take your foot off the gas as much, try to push the change, because other people will be excited. They'll find their way in it. They'll find their vision in it. They'll find their own person edge in it. They'll find their personalities in it. They'll be excited about things that they can do because of that change, and the rest unfolds. And it's the adventure that is truly what's meaningful.
There is so much that I love about this, Hugh. From Let me start with this, right? If you temporarily suspend your opinion of the solutions that other people are bringing, your own and theirs, people will notice. It is palpable when you really are authentically giving people air and space to express their concerns or to express their passions, and and therefore you're much less likely to encounter the following, which I have encountered. You go down the path that you said you wanted as a leader, and it doesn't work. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody says, "Yeah, I knew it. I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't going to work." And you then have to say, "Well, how come you didn't tell me that beforehand?" And the answer is almost every time, because you weren't open to it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell you because you weren't available for that. That's one of the things that I love about this. Another thing that I love about this, in a past life, I was a theater director. And one of the first and most important lessons that I remember learning, I think reading a book by a famous director named Bill Ball, was the phrase "show me." Somebody says, one of your actors is on stage. They say, "Here's what I want to do in this moment in the script," and whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, whether you know for a fact that it's not going to work, the first thing to say, especially in a new relationship with a new actor or in a new show, is "show me." And sometimes, as a director, they would show me, and I would learn I was wrong. This is a great thing to do. More often, I learned I was correct. And very often, so did they. They tried it. They showed me.
And,
They said,
and wasn't that a
Aaron, that
wonderful
didn't work.
opportunity not to be a jerk? In a
So
wonderful
much,
opportunity.
right? And what did it cost? What did it cost, right? And then here is sometimes they learned on their own that it didn't work. And that was tremendously valuable. So
Yes.
they got to try something, and and then we got to do it my way, and I never had to argue about it because they just were like, thanks for letting me try that. That didn't work out. Let's try it your way. And the most valuable thing about this strategy of all is that when you say show me, when you suspend your own opinions of a solution and create this free flow of information, then people are rewarded for bringing their own ideas to the table. Just the listening and hearing and valuing their input alone is enough reward that they will keep that pump pumping. The pump of their brilliance just keeps paying you and your team. I love this suggestion.
What's yours? I'm dying to know.
Okay, well, before I get to my last suggestion, you can always reach out to me, folks, on LinkedIn. I'm the only Aaron Schmuckler on LinkedIn. You can also reach me by email, aaron@theyesworks.com. And right now, we are enrolling people in our final managers upskilling sprint of the year. This is an 8-week program, meets a couple of hours every week to give managers what I think is the bare minimum, the bare bones tools to be an effective manager who drives performance with compassion and heart. If anything that we are talking about here resonates with you, then the manager's upskilling sprint will resonate with you as well. And we have limited seats and they're already going. So reach out if you or somebody on your team would benefit from becoming a more skilled leader, then we would love to have you join the manager's upskilling sprint. My final suggestion for you today on how to foster a culture where people will embrace change is don't wait for change. This is there's you've all heard the term. If you're here today, it's probably because you thought, yeah, like change management, I need to work on that. Change management is a dramatically overrated mechanism. Change management, I think, is, what are we going to implement when? We've been talking about relationship management. We've been talking about encouragement. We've been talking about creating security, creating courage, creating optimism. Those are the things that, whether we've used those words or not, those are the things we've been talking about today. So my final suggestion is be working to foster a culture that is change ready, where change is just as Hugh, what's the first thing that you said on our call today, Hugh? Systems are inherently, naturally changey. That's not what you said. It's the same idea, I think, right?
Yes.
Is because there's always going to be change. You've got to be encouraging change. Notice the ways that people are responding to any new stimulus. If people are adapting to any new stimulus, even if it is, the front door was locked today because of construction, and they walked around to the back and they didn't complain, that is an opportunity to say, thank you so much. You just adapted to this thing. Really appreciate it. There are so many little tiny incremental things that you can do to recognize the way people are already embracing change. There's so many things that you can do to create an environment where people feel safe, where people believe that they will be heard, to use earlier points, to where people have experienced that they can fall flat on their face and people will, instead of ridiculing them, pick them up. All of these things are going to create an environment where people will embrace change because you have a change ready culture. You have a change ready team.
Fantastic. Yes. I don't know that I've ever phrased it that way before, and I like it. And again, you have misdirected us because you said, oh, we were going to talk about change management, and we weren't talking about change management at all. We were talking about how to not be reactive to change, but instead just build it into the culture and into who you are as a leader and reap the benefits. Hard
Yep.
work, but
Yep.
so worth it.
Yeah. We are always changing. Let's, instead of standing on the bottom of the pool, let's tread water. It's exhausting. It's really rewarding.
Yeah. Not dying is fun.
Hugh, talking with you is fun. I love our conversations. I'm so glad that you joined me for this our most public conversation to date. I think we've had conversations in front of 40 other people before, but never in front of however many hundred plus that we've had today. So thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you in my life.
Of course, I feel the same. And thanks for putting on this party today. It was fun to come and hang out with you again.
Yeah, and everybody else, thanks for joining us for this party, this party as well. Stay tuned for the next 8 Ways To. In about a month, you'll be seeing invitations in your LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.